right, I think we will go ahead and get going here. So thank you all for joining us. So I love Ferraris. They're fast, they're super cool, they're stylish. Like a car can get you from point A to point B, no issue at all, right? But a Ferrari, it does it in style. It's a work of art. So today we're going to give you the keys to your Tableau Online Ferrari. Welcome to the Tableau Online admin experience. My name is Evan Slotnick. I'm a product manager at Tableau, focused on Tableau Online analytics. I joined Tableau in 2017 as a part of our pre-sales team in the Washington, D.C. office. And then I sacrificed vitamin D and sunshine and happiness to move to Seattle earlier this year to join the development team as a product manager. I absolutely love to travel with my fiance. Whenever we go anywhere, we try to hit up craft breweries as well as local donut shops. So if you have any recommendations from where you all are from, please come find me afterwards. And then lastly, it says New York Giants is an interest of mine. I almost didn't want to put that on this slide because that would mean I would have to admit that I'm a New York Giants fan. And after the loss against the Jets this past weekend, that's a painful thing to admit. But hopefully better days are ahead. I also have my colleague Jonathan here with me. Jonathan was actually my mentor in the Washington, D.C. office and helped me transition to the development team.
Thank you, Evan. So as Evan said, my name is Jonathan Varkovitzky. I'm a product manager at Tableau, and I've been with the company for quite some time now. So and I should mention, I'm on the release and feedback team. So is anyone out here a beta user or using pre-release for anything? All right, I see some hands. Excellent. If any of you want to get a peek at what's coming or what's next, go to prerelease.tableau.com and sign up. Just a little bonus if you want to see what's coming. But I've been on the development team in a number of different roles, and I kind of did a reverse commute of Evan. So I started in Seattle, and I lived there for 7 years, 5 of which were with Tableau. And then 2 years ago, I moved to DC. And, you know, we can agree that east is least and west is best.
A little bit.
But yeah, so having been at Tableau for a long time, one thing I did want to say about being at Tableau this long is how far the product has come. So when I joined Tableau, we shipped 2 new and exciting features that you may be familiar with, having filled maps and having a data server that you could publish data sources to.
In 2012, while he was shipping that, I shipped my high school diploma.
Thank you. Yeah, outside of work, I also have hobbies. Whenever I travel anywhere, I like to go hiking, see what's outside the city. The Southwest area here is beautiful. I was actually just telling one of the people in the front earlier, I had my honeymoon out in Utah just a few months ago. I'm on our sailing racing team out of Annapolis, so if anyone here's a sailor, please come up afterwards. I'd love to chat with you and talk more about boats. And I like to dabble a little bit in photography and try my hand at things. And I forgot to say, having been at Tableau so long, I'm a little bit of a Tableau dinosaur. But all right, let's go ahead, and I'm going to talk about our agenda for today.
What's your agenda?
So with the agenda here, as Evan said, we want to introduce you to the Ferrari of Tableau Online. And Evan, I know what you were going with the analogy here, but I don't know if that's the image we're going for. Let me just restart this slide. I'm sorry. Let's do it better. Okay. So, we want to give you a good experience. We're giving you the Lamborghini of Tableau Online experiences, something that looks nice, sleek, and classy. I think we can all agree this is a little bit better. So to start us off, Evan's going to have a section on content management best practices online and how to set that up and manage it easily. After that, I'm going to introduce admin insights and how you can use this to see what's happening on your site and how are your users leveraging Tableau Online. After that, I'm going to discuss Tableau Bridge. This is a great tool for taking data that you have behind a firewall and getting it into Tableau Online pretty easily. To close us out, Evan's going to be talking about security, how we do it at Tableau Online, keeping you and your data secure. Now at the end, we've saved a little bit of time for Q&A, so please write down any questions you have, and Evan would be more than happy to answer all of them once we're done.
Thanks, Jonathan. All right, so let's dive in. content management is a really important part of the Tableau Online experience, right? You want to make sure that you have an environment that is efficient and it doesn't ultimately become something like a parking lot, right? You want to have structure to content, have an approval process to make sure that your stakeholders can trust it, right? That it is a single source of truth. So when you typically think about content management, what comes to mind for most individuals is permissions, and more specifically, locking permissions. So why would a online admin want to lock permissions? Can anyone take a guess? Sure. Say that again? Yeah, for security. I mean, put it into another words, it's governance, right? But absolutely. You want to make sure that you have a governed environment, right? And the way that breaks down is, of course, security. So you want to avoid ad hoc permissioning in some cases. And what I'm saying by that is, that doesn't mean not to trust the business, right, to do their own thing. It doesn't mean to necessarily not delegate it to the project leader or the site owner. That can still happen. But we definitely still have occurrences where we need to lock down content for any given reason. And then, of course, scalability, right? Changing items at the project level is really important because if you have thousands of workbooks, hundreds of views, hundreds of thousands of views, whatever that might look like, changing all of those or having an unlocked stack is really difficult, right? You want to think about it in a systematic fashion. So when thinking about locking permissions and permissioning structure as a whole, you might think about, okay, we can leverage nested projects. Nested projects are a project within a project, right? Basically a folder within a folder. But permissions on a nested project can only be assigned in two ways. The first is locking it at the top level, meaning that everything below, all the sub-projects, have that same permission structure, or you're unlocking the entire stack, which means that every sub-project has their own unique permissions and permission abilities. That might not work for everyone. So for the next couple of slides, we're actually going to go through what we typically see in an online environment. This isn't necessarily what we recommend, but it's what we commonly come across in Tableau. The reason we're going to go through this is so that you can see the compare and contrast to the recommended fashion, right? So nested projects locked at the top. Here we have a common scenario, 3 different departments within our online site, marketing, sales, HR, right? Within them, we have dev, prod, and data source projects. Can anyone tell me what's the issue here with the marketing project? All right, maybe you guys had a little too much fun at the welcome reception. I'll help you out. The issue with the marketing project is everyone can see everything in it, right? If I have my CMO or my executives looking at the marketing project, they can see items that are in development, that are in prod, that are in data sources. Everyone in marketing can see that, right? What if I'm an individual and I go look at a dashboard? I don't realize it's in development, and I'm making decisions off of data that I should not be making decisions off of. Maybe it's fake data for that matter, right? So locking it at the top can prove difficult in some scenarios. So ultimately, people then say, okay, let's unlock the stack. But then this is saying to trust the business entirely. And I'm not saying, and I want to kind of underline the point, I'm not saying don't trust the business, but there's a saying in IT, if you are in IT and you aren't uncomfortable with the level of trust you have with the business, then you aren't trusting them enough. So from here, you can give the business the trust that they'll do this in these situations, but it's not going to work for everyone. It's not going to work for every use case, right? So ultimately, we say, hey, bring it down one level, right? We eliminated the top project level. Now we have it locked at the top level, marketing dev, marketing prod, marketing data sources, sales dev, sales prod, sales data sources, and so forth. Here, where it's locked at that top level, we haven't added any net new projects. We've actually just eliminated ones. So we're not getting wider in this scenario. We're only getting flatter. But again, is this going to be scalable? What if I have a different audience within a department, right? So looking at HR, we have benefits, recruiting, violations. I've seen violations data. I never want to see my name in the violations data. But it's typically dirty, nasty data. It's hard to work with, right? Our recruiters have no business seeing violations data. So what do? Then we say we have an HR dev, HR recruiting prod, HR violation prod, HR benefits prod, HR data sources, right? I've only done this for one region, one department. What if we have Latin America, United States, EMEA, APAC, et cetera? We're getting wider and wider, right? What if we have sensitive content within a department? HR violations data, that's really personal, really personal. Very limited members should be seeing that. Maybe we need separate projects for dev, prod, and data sources specifically for HR violations, right? Again, constantly getting wider, wider, wider. So I was talking with one of our customers who's the director of analytics at a large technology organization who's a customer of Tableau Online, and he said, this works. It does work, but it's a nightmare to maintain. This is thinking in terms of a horizontal structure, and we think in terms of vertical stacks. So at Tableau, we have a lot of smart people here. Jonathan was still at lunch, so we were good. And we all came together, and we thought through, hey, how are we going to attack this problem? What's the best structure here? So now we're going to pivot into what we actually recommend in terms of content management best practices. And we're going to use a marketing scenario here. So a couple of considerations and nuances to take note of before we begin. The first is data source and workbook publishers have different roles. Data source, workbooks, different roles, right? Most content will go through an approval process. Notice that I said most, not all. We still want to support innovation and insights by allowing ad hoc analyses. But for the most part, we want to create a single source of truth for our content to be understood by our end users. Then lastly, publishers cannot publish directly to production. That's what is ultimately going to create that parking lot, right? We got to go through that approval process. So what does this workflow look like? It looks a little complex here, but when I break down the framework, it actually is quite simple. So we're going to begin in the top left corner with the data source publishers. They're the individuals that are connecting to the data sources, making the joins, right? Doing any custom SQL if necessary. And then they publish that data source to the departmental data source project. From there, we're going to follow the top line. The approved workbook publisher connects to those departmental data sources and publishes it into the approved workbook sandbox. From there, the workbook approver checks out that workbook, makes sure that all the calcs are right, that they're using the right dimensions and measures, that they're using the right data sources. They're the ones kind of saying, hey, the single source of truth here, it looks good. Here's the stamp of approval. And then ultimately, the approved workbook promoter moves the content from approved workbook sandbox into the approved workbook project. Again, we want to support ad hoc analyses. So on the bottom line, we have ad hoc workbook publishers who have the ability to connect to departmental data sources and publish into ad hoc workbook projects. With it going into ad hoc workbook projects, maybe as admins of online sites, you all determine, hey, content can only sit in here for 2 weeks or 3 months or whatever that might be for you all to determine to make sure that it remains a clean environment. And then, of course, the target audience. Those are the viewers, right? They have the ability to see what's in the ad hoc workbook projects and the approved workbook projects. Note that I skipped over the personal sandbox in white in the middle there. We'll get back to that in a second. So what does this look like in the online environment? On the left, we have our projects broken out. Marketing ad hoc workbooks, marketing approved workbook sandbox, marketing approved workbooks, marketing data sources in the personal sandbox. And then on the right, we have our groups. These are the groups that you can just add as you're adding users into your online environment, you could just add them into the given group, and they would inherit the permissions of that group. That's the Ferrari. That's what's going to make it easy. When you add a net new user, you don't have to permission them to every single project that you have in your environment. They're just going to inherit what they necessarily need. Keep in mind, a user can be a part of as many groups as they need to. So if you have maybe a smaller deployment, one individual might occupy the role, if you will, of multiple items. They can be added to multiple groups, right? So who are the players here? We have the ad hoc publishers. They have the ability to be data source connectors, ad hoc workbook editors, and personal sandbox publishers, right? These are the ad hoc publishers. We also have the approved workbook publishers. They have the same permissions as the ad hoc publishers, but they also have workbook sandbox editor and approved workbook interactor. We also have the approved workbook approvers. They're the ones that make sure that everything looks good, right? And then we have the approved workbook promoters. They're the ones that move it from the sandbox into the final project. There are two tangential players here that we went over, but they still play such a key role. The first is the data source publisher. They would be data source editors. They're the ones creating those joins, et cetera. And then lastly, this is arguably the most important one, the viewers. These are the end users that are consuming the dashboards, getting that rich analysis out of it. They would be approved workbook interactors and ad hoc workbook interactors. What does this look like in the online environment when you're actually permissioning it out? When you click the three dots, that's here. This is a pretty hefty slide, I know that. Feel free to take a picture, but the reason I included this slide is you all will have access to our decks at the end of TC, so you all can leverage this. But I wanted to show you exactly how it breaks down in the online environment. Then, of course, there's the personal sandbox, right? This is what I had come back to. If you set all users to none and then ad hoc workbook publishers and approved workbook publishers to only see and save on the project, they can only see their own content. That's cool. You have one project supporting your entire user base on a personalized level, right? No longer will everyone, say you have 100 users, right? You don't need 100 projects for them all to have their own little sandbox, area to be able to publish to. This cleans up, creates a much more efficient process. This is the second Ferrari. Like, we're giving you multiple today. Evidently, I got a lot of sales. This is awesome. It's making your environment much more sleek, much more efficient, much more minimal as possible. So some key takeaways as it relates to content management best practices. In order for locked permissions to work, project structure must be flat. It's got to be flat. Complex workflows. It didn't require a complex framework, right? It looked daunting on the onset, but when I broke down that framework, it was pretty understandable. Then the personal sandbox, it's super cool. It's a Ferrari. You're leveraging one folder for all your users.
Thank you, Evan. So before I actually get started on my section, I want to quickly say something about personal sandboxes. I think it's a really super cool thing to have deployed. I don't know about anyone else here. I've certainly published workbooks with workbook name _draft or _fake to make sure that people don't make those assumptions that my draft is live and that they should be making decisions on it. But with a personal sandbox, I'm going to be able to publish, see how my vizzes look on server, or online, test them on mobile, and when I'm ready, with a workbook approver, I can migrate that into prod where my leadership can see and use it. So now I want to change gears a little bit and talk about admin insights. This is a new feature we're releasing on Tableau Online. And so a good place to start might be is, what are admin insights? That's the first question we all have. Well, admin insights, they're the Ferrari of admin views. And I know we discussed like the image, that's not the Ferrari we're going for. Okay, so admin insights, they're the Lamborghini of admin views. We're taking all of the value we were able to get from your admin views and really turning it up a notch. So essentially, with admin insights, you're creating a new project on your online site. And to do this, you actually just do it with a click of a button. So here's a quick screenshot of an admin pane where you log in and you click Create Project. To do this, you just need 5 seats on your site, and your site has to have been in existence for 30 days, so we have enough data for you. But yeah, with a single click, this project is created. In that project, there's some data sources. So here on the left, you can see all the dimensions and measures that are in the data source. Don't worry about digging into that now. I'm going to talk about them later. But of course, this is Tableau. We weren't just going to give you data, even though we all love it. So we gave you some vizzes. So in this project, there's a workbook of starting dashboards that give you information using this data about your site. I'm going to walk through some of those. But the really exciting thing is it's totally customizable. It's a regular published workbook. You can access it. You can make any changes that you want. And of course, all of these things together are giving you deeper insights about what's happening on your site and answering your specific questions. As I go through this section, I can talk about how we're getting those insights. So what's in this project? What's in those data sources? So you're getting two data sources. There's TS users and TS events. These are the two primary data sources that you get out of there. One has information about your users and their activity, and the other has information about the events and the content of your site. This is updated daily on the back end for you. So you don't need to worry about refreshing this data source. It happens behind the scenes and is updated once a day on your site. And the data is fresh as of yesterday. This information is provided with a 90-day rolling window. So when you're looking at the visits or the data, we want you to see if there's trends or if things are different today than they were yesterday. So we give you this window. If 90 days isn't enough, though, that's actually totally fine. You can create an abstract based on this that is appending data, or you can create a flow that does the same. And then over time, you'll build up as much history as you're interested in seeing for your data. And all of this is provided in that single project. And by the way, when you create the project, it is initially permissioned only for the admins of your site to have access. But like any other project, you're free to change the permissions. You can use the things Evan talked about in his section to choose the right user base that you want to have see these, or maybe even let all users see it at your discretion. So I said I was going to dive into what's inside these data sources. So there's a lot going on here with these dimensions and measures. I'm not going to be going through the entire list. Don't worry. I want to hit some highlights of kind of the power of what you can get there. So one of the dimensions we have is event types, just seeing what has happened on our site. So you can see publish events. You can see when any single view was loaded. You can see when a data source was published. You can also see when an activity or when a piece of content was deleted. So if you've ever been going to a meeting and suddenly your workbook was missing, well, now with Insights, you can go back and see who deleted it. Maybe go chat with them and figure out what happened and get that cleared up right away. We have information in a field called item types, and this is what are all the assets that you have on your site. So you can have views, data sources, workbooks, projects. This allows you to link events to items, and eventually all of those, you also want to connect to your users. So you can see what are the different types of users, when is the last time that they logged in, what events have they been doing. You can link all of these fields together, and in the default dashboards we do, but you can also make any other relationships that you want. As I said, there's many, many more fields here. I'm not going to go through all of them. We could be here for the rest of the day getting to know one another, but I think we're going to move on a little bit. So, and I know we all love data. We're all data rock stars, right? We learned this morning. So we love the data, but it is Tableau conference. So I want to show you guys some vizzes. Is anyone interested in seeing some vizzes? All right, okay. People are excited about vizzes. That's why we're here. So I went ahead, logged into Tableau Online, and I picked a customer site that I decided I was going to share all of their data with you. So if anyone out there is a little nervous, I'm about to show everyone your site. It's okay, I checked with the company ahead of time. It's a software company called Tableau, where they run their entire development team on Tableau Online. So it's a site with 1,400 users who use it daily. Then we run our entire business on there. And also interestingly, Evan and I do all of our work on there. So in the data you'll see behind us, there's a little bit of Evan and I's work in there. So I'm going to start with the first example dashboard we have for site overview. So this is telling you at the really highest level what's going on your site. So at the top, we have metrics about how many assets has our team published. So we can see how many views, workbooks, projects, really at that high level just to see what's adoption like. The next line down here, we have information about our users and adoption of the seats. So on the left, it's just a total, it's a sum of total. But on the right, we actually break it down by what type of license are they. And just taking a close look, by the way, Evan, if you could write down. So we're at 93% on creators, and that's getting a little close. So if you can call our rep after this, that'd be great. We want to get that fixed before we run out. Thanks, Evan. All right, moving down, we have high-level data about logins. So you can see, and this is, I should say, aggregated at the weekly level, how many people are logging into the site, You can look for trends if it's been growing, decreasing, kind of anything of that nature at a broad level. And then at the bottom, we have some high-level traffic stats, primarily calling out what's the most popular content on your site. All right, so I want to move on to the next dashboard. So we have the traffic detail dashboard. And initially, you might be thinking, taking a look at this, and it's a totally fair assumption that it looks really symmetric. So it's actually not exactly symmetrical. So on the left, we're looking at the number of view type events, and on the right is data source events, so doing data source queries. At the top, we have a kind of step chart showing those weekly load amounts. And at the bottom, we actually have a really interesting view. I like that we're loading events and binning by hour of the day. So we're taking all the data from the past 90 days and seeing what times of day are most popular for these things. And I think it's really cool to look at this for Tableau or another business. You can see a little bit about that company's culture. You can see, for example, 7, 8 o'clock a.m., my coworkers, they're coming in, they're starting their day, they're using Tableau Online. And I see a little bit of a lull in the middle there. And when I was looking at this data, preparing to share it with you today, I actually solved a very interesting, not exactly business problem. When I go out to lunch, I go to about noon, and the cafeteria sometimes can be a little bit picked bare. And I looked here, and I see that the view loads, they're lowest in the 11 a.m. hour. So I think my coworkers, they're taking lunch a little bit early, and me being, the noon lunch guy, I'm missing out. And Admin Insights helped me answer that question. Certainly not something I expected to learn while prepping for today. At the bottom, we have information about what's the most popular content on our site. And as an admin for online, this could be really interesting. So first of all, you can see what is the most popular vizzes and data sources. You can work with the creators of those to help them promote it, see what it's used for, and what pieces of that are most valuable to the business. But there's another actually really interesting thing you get out of here is who are the most popular viewers? So by seeing who's the most popular viewers, you actually see who in your business is using Tableau Online the most. And so these power users, they're the people who you can team up with when you want to make a case to your business about expanding online. Or if you want to learn what about it is making Tableau Online work very well for their department, so that you can share that with another department in your business. We're basically giving you a list of names of those people to get started on that project. Now, the last of these views I want to share, and this is just a subset of them, is the login detail view. So this is information about what are your users, or at what rate are your users coming in and using Tableau Online. So at the top, we have that same view actually from the site overview, just weekly levels. And that's, again, good to see here. We can see if there's any trending. And I actually really like this next view. So similarly to in the traffic detail, this is an hourly breakdown, but spread out over the 90 days. And so you can see any interesting trends. You have, does anyone have an end of quarter dashboard? Yeah, I think most businesses have them, and they're really popular with sales folks at the end of the year. Not sure why. But you can see the change in traffic patterns here. And looking, at a mid-year data for a dev team, I see a pretty normal trend here. I see spikes of 5 grouped together. You have 5 work days. And I was looking for any interesting trends here, and I actually saw one. So here in the beginning of September, there was only 4 spikes in 1 week. That's a little bit strange. Does anyone have any thoughts about why my coworkers maybe took the day off? So I think I heard in the back, it was Labor Day. So people, they took the time off. But you can see there's actually still a little bit of a hump in that day when it should have been, when it was Monday and people normally would be coming in. So you can see that some users, Evan and I, we did check in, make sure everything was working fine. And you can see it in the data right there. I just think that's really cool, trying to see the behavior of your user base. Now the last section I want to show you is this viz in the bottom right, where we look at how long since the longest time since certain users have logged in. So if you're trying to drive adoption and get more people using your site, you can look here and see who are the people who maybe aren't leveraging it, and maybe you want to reach out and see what do they need so that they can get working on online and that they'll be happy starting a bit sooner. So I think that's just a really cool view to see what's been going on with the people who aren't using online, which really isn't reflected in some of those other vizzes. So for those of you who are experienced admins, you might be asking yourself and saying in your heads, aren't these just admin views? I've seen this before. And they are similar, but they are the Lamborghini of admin views. So before, we were providing you with static dashboards that showed you certain information about your site, and you could make decisions and determinations based on that. But all of the dashboards I showed you, you can customize them. It's a normal workbook, edit it in web edit, download it, make changes, and republish. all of that's up to you. Or actually, you can just make your own dashboards from scratch. Now, the data is also integratable. This is something I didn't talk about before. So those data sources were published extracts on your site, and they behave just like any other published extract. So that means you can join new data to them. You could have an extract that is joining data, or you could run a prep flow. And actually, this is something I do personally, because I track how are people using the site, but also how does that break down not just by individual, but the team within development. So say we have a maps team or the data server team, but Tableau Online doesn't know that. It knows their name and their email address. So I have an HR table that has every employee at Tableau, their name, their email, their team, where they sit. I can join that data in, and I can modify all of these views to answer specific questions about adoption within, say, my maps team or the data server team that before just wasn't available to us. I can see all this, of course, at a finer level of detail. So as you saw in some of those views, we aggregated to the entire site level and averaged a value over a week. But we also have data to every single viz load that happened on your site. You can get data about every upload event, every data refresh, and you can choose which of those is most valuable to you or drill down, depending on your questions. All of this together is really allowing you to craft your own story. As an online admin, you're promoting Tableau in your organization. You want to see your business continue to succeed, and you think Tableau Online is going to be a great tool to do that. So by making your own vizzes, bringing in that business data that only you have, you can really craft that story. So I want to give you a couple key takeaways to think about, to take home, and next week when you're back in the office, you can still remember from insights. The first is that we're giving you a whole new level of access to data. As I was saying, you can drill down from the site level down to each individual interaction. You can connect in new information that your business has that makes these views more relevant and more useful. You can ensure that you're getting the most value of online because you're able to select what information is important and show it. And of course, you're answering, by doing that, your exact questions, not just the ones that the default views are able to answer. One moment, please. So next, I want to pivot and talk a little bit about Tableau Bridge. This is a tool that we provide. It's a free service that can help you take data from inside of a firewall deployment, or inside a firewall environment, and bring it into Tableau Online. But before I do that, I just want to have a quick aside and talk about published data sources and making sure that we're kind of all on the same page, because Bridge is going to be leveraging that. So any of you who are creators use Tableau Desktop, you're going to recognize the little icon here on the left. I have some data sources, and the little square with the Tableau logo is a published data source. So when you publish any workbook to Tableau Online, you have two choices how you're connecting to data at kind of a large scale. You can embed it in the workbook, so just that workbook can use the connection or the extract and the calcs that are in it, and that's all right, but it has some limitations. But when you publish a data source, it opens up a whole new world of possibilities. One of the biggest ones is that multiple users can leverage this single connection. So you don't have to duplicate extracts. You're not hitting your server with as many connections if you're doing a live query. You've created also a single source of truth for the data. And there's two aspects here. So one, let's say looking at an extract refresh. If, say, I like to refresh my sales data on the hour, but Evan likes to do it on the half hour, and we both have similar vizzes, an executive might load our dashboards and see different numbers at the exact same moment. And that leads to a lot of uncertainty, a lot of emails in our inbox, or phone calls, or Slack messages, and that's not what we want. So by having a single shared data source, all of the vizzes get their data refreshed at the same time. And additionally, if you do any calculations, everyone's using the same calculations and the same aggregations. So again, their workbooks are going to show the same data and results, and that makes everyone happier. Now, you also are reducing load on those live data sources. So obviously, if we're extracted and we're sharing, that's great. But if you're piping through a live connection and many different views can share a single connection, they can start sharing their caches. And I was actually speaking to someone in the front row earlier about this, where if you're sharing the same connection and you have a shared cache, then the request doesn't even have to go to your data source. It's being worked on online. And of course, all these together are giving you performance improvements. Obviously, if you're bogging down your data source, queries are going to take longer. But also, if you have 100 workbooks all trying to refresh their extract at the same time, you're going to be waiting for those extracts to finish one after the other. That's really not ideal. So by sharing it, there's a whole host of performance improvements. And one thing I just want to add is this data server with all of these published data sources, that was one of those things that we shipped right as I joined. So having all of these has been really amazing to see in Tableau since then. So let's dive into what is Tableau Bridge exactly. So it's how we can connect data from behind a firewall and bring it up into Tableau Online. It works both for the live and abstract case. So if your business has a preference one way or the other, if you really like using live data, or if your business really loves abstracts, both of these are totally supported, and you don't have to change anything about how your workbooks work. The deployment is simplified. Maybe using other products, you've had to have arguments and fights with, or I'm sorry, discussions with your security team about making exemptions and opening ports, and you have to do that for every single data source. And that's a lot of work and a lot of meetings, and we thought that wasn't really a scalable solution. So Tableau Online has an encrypted outbound connection that it has to Tableau Online, and it can wait for queries, and I'll be talking a bit about how that works. And of course, this can all be a centralized deployment, so you as an admin could work with IT, set up a system that is running the service, but it can also be distributed. And at Tableau Online, at Tableau, I can say, as a publisher, I make my own workbooks, I'm making new data sources, exploring these things to do new analytics, and I have a version of Tableau Bridge running just on the desktop under my desk. But we also have that centralized system. You can use both freely, you can allow one and the other, so that's really nice flexibility. So moving on, I'm talking about the topology, so where do the different parts sit, how do they click together? So as I said, Bridge runs inside your firewall, so that gives you all of the benefits of if Bridge has to run a query, it's in the same closed-off environment as your data sources, it can run queries. You don't have all of that headache of going through the firewall. Now, on a regular basis, Bridge pings Tableau Online to see if there's any queries that are needed, any abstracts that have to be refreshed. If such a request exists, it goes ahead and runs that query, it collects, it aggregates that data, and then when it's done, it pushes that up to online. Now, if you have a lot of load or you want some redundancy, you can totally have multiple servers set up and deployed to run Bridge for a single site. And as I said, you can also run it on a personal machine just to do an ad hoc analysis, or even leave it running there for the long term. So I'm going to now talk about how live connections work with Bridge, and then after that, abstracted. They are similar, but there are some subtle differences that are important to note. So with live, as I said, Bridge is pinging Tableau Online on a regular basis, and if at any point any of your users clicks a viz load, Bridge is going to notice, oh, someone's trying to load a viz, and there's data needed that comes through me, through the Bridge. And once it gets that request, it's going to ping your internal data source, it's going to aggregate that data, get the query result ready, and it's going to push that up to Tableau Online. Once that happens, the viz loads, the user is none the wiser, the experience is exactly what they're used to, and the viz loads, and they're happy. So now, I'm going to also discuss how does this all look with Bridge, with abstracts on Bridge, pardon me. So you schedule your refreshes on server like you're used to if you've logged into the data server, to the data source window, you set a schedule. It's just like you're used to. Bridge is pinging online on a regular basis to see if there have been any changes to that, because it needs to know when to run. Now, once time comes to do a refresh, that job is run on the Bridge host, so that's on that machine in your environment. So you do, of course, want to make sure you have enough hard drive space, depending on the size of your abstract. It's going to run that job, and it's going to push it to server, or to online when it's ready. And then it's a published data source. So like I was saying, you don't have to change anything from how your workbooks currently connect to the data. It's going to look the same to them. And it's published by Bridge. So I do want to mention some of the requirements around the host and some of the things to consider when you're selecting the machines and how many you have. So the machine needs to be a Windows host to run Tableau Bridge. And you should be running Bridge as a service, not as an application. And the big advantage here is that you want, if your user who's set Bridge up, if they're logged off and not on the machine, your abstract refreshes can still happen. Maybe they're sick, maybe they go home at the end of the day, I don't know. We want to enable all of those behaviors. And it's actually quite simple to set up. It's actually just a drop-down menu in Bridge when you're on the machine, when you're logged in. You can choose between application and service. In my opinion, you should select service, but of course that's up to you. One important thing to consider is these abstract refreshes, they're single-threaded. So while Bridge is creating an abstract, it's only running one on that specific Bridge. So if you have many abstracts that are all scheduled to run at the exact same time and having them queue up and having to wait a few minutes isn't acceptable, that's one of the times you want to consider having a couple more Bridge servers, having those set up so you have some parallelism and you can clear out that queue. But the really cool thing is that all this can actually run on commodity hardware. I don't know if anyone out there was thinking like, yeah, this is cool, but I don't want to deal with buying more enterprise hardware. That's not why we're doing, that's not why we're here. And so you don't have to. So with that online site I was showing you with Tableau, so we have 1,400 users. We have about 55,000 various data events, so live queries or extract refreshes in a given week. So we run those on, first of all, only 7 Bridge clients to support 1,400 people. And those machines, to give you a rough idea of the specs, they're dual core machines, and they have about 64 gigabytes of RAM. So this is pretty scalable. And as I was saying, you can run it on your own personal machine, and I run it on the one under my desk for some of the data sources that I use. So before moving on to the next section and handing you back off to Evan, I wanted to give you a couple of takeaways from Bridge, just to remember and think about if you're interested with using Bridge. So Bridge, it's connecting your internal assets and bringing them up into Tableau Online. It's supporting abstracted and live data sources, so you don't need to change how your business is connecting to data, any policies you have one way or the other. There's some dedicated admin views for Bridge that show you amounts of traffic, any errors that you've been having, times for various jobs if you're doing extracts. All of that's shown to you as the admin. And as I said, really the big thing is it all runs on commodity hardware. Now, if you're interested in trying out Bridge, you want to see how it works, go ahead and scan this QR code here. So this QR code is going to link you to our Bridge documentation. And if you can't get a picture of it now, don't worry. As Evan said, all of these slides were made available after conference, and there's a super secret hidden slide at the end that has all of our URLs listed out, so you can see them there as well.
Thanks, Jonathan. So we wanted to touch upon security because that's a really important component of the online admin experience, right? You're entrusting us as a software as a service product with your data, so what do we do with it? Like, not what do we do with your data, but like, how do we secure the environment, right? In terms of our security overview, this is just going to be a high-level item, right? We touch upon it based off of physical security, data security, and privacy. We have account security, application security. We have encryption at rest, security in transit, encryption in transit as well. We take your data very seriously. Obviously, your data is fundamental to your success, so it's fundamental to our success, and is an absolute top priority, right? So what do we do in terms of governance? So Tableau Online is hosted in SOC 2 audited enterprise AWS data centers. All of our production instances, our pods, are hosted in Amazon Web Services, so it's a little bit of shared responsibility there. Tableau Online is a multi-tenant solution. That means that in Tableau Online, you are on shared hardware. Given our code base, we write it in so that when you are connecting to your site, you're programmatically linking your information with that. Nothing can go between the two that is written into our code, right? So you're on shared hardware here. But you can rest assured that your data is your own, no matter what. Obviously, user passwords, they're salted and hashed in terms of our internal systems. We can't see them. Tableau employees don't have access to your data whatsoever. I'm the product manager for Tableau Online Analytics. I can't go see your data sources or connect to them, right? But we do monitor metrics for system utilization. We make sure that you all can log in, that you all are accessing views, that you're receiving subscriptions, right? High-level metrics to make sure that our environment is up, it's healthy, it is providing you the value that you all need out of it. So what happens when I connect to data, right? Data connections from a live connection, which Jonathan went over, is not permanently stored, right? It's not permanently stored. You're connecting and querying the data in its original source. If you leverage an extract, that is bringing data into Tableau Online for analysis. And we are encrypted at rest. So your data, when it's in Tableau Online, it's actually encrypted at rest. And the way we do that is by enabling native AWS Elastic Block Storage for root-mounted volumes. All transactions are performed over TLS, so that means that when you are making connections to Tableau Online, it's actually encrypted in transit right? So user credentials, data extracts uploaded to the service, and data source connection information, as it's flowing through, it's encrypted as well. So what proactive measures do we take at Tableau to make sure that we're in a healthy state? We perform automated and manual vulnerability testing, right? We want to try to penetrate our own system. And when we can't even think of every possible way to do it, we hire third-party security firms to try to penetrate our systems prior to major releases. We take, just like it's important to save your work in your normal day-to-day work, we save our work too. We take a daily backup of all critical components of Tableau Online, and you can feel comfortable that our backups are encrypted both in transit and in storage, and only system administrators have access to them. There are sometimes acts of God which cause, a necessary reason to pivot and go away from our primary data centers to our backups. And our backups we maintain with our backups that we are taking on a daily basis, right? If you're more interested about learning about Tableau Online and how to scale it in terms of security, there's a white paper at this QR code which you feel free to take a picture of. But again, the links will be at the end. We've touched upon a lot of items today, right? I originally began with content management best practices. Jonathan spoke about admin insights and Tableau Bridge, and we're closing out with security. This session was meant to scratch the surface on these items as the online experience. We're just beginning Tableau Conference, right? So later in this week, we have Tableau Bridge, which is a really in-depth conversation with the product manager for Tableau Bridge tomorrow on Thursday. I highly recommend it, especially if you're connecting to on-prem data from Tableau Online. And then if you're interested in learning about what's under the hood, truly, how do we architect Tableau Online under the hood, I highly recommend you all join our engineering team for the Tableau Online architecture talk. These are both quite technical talks, but we also have Securing Tableau Online on Friday, which is taught by our InfoSec team as well as our product management team around how Tableau Online is secure. This is going way deeper than what we touched upon today. It is specifically dedicated to security. And then, of course, admin insights. It's a fairly new feature, but the PM for it is going to be going through how we can drive online site adoption through admin insights. How do you get the most out of this rich content about the information of your users? So please, please, please give us a survey in the app. I'd love it if you give us some good remarks for myself. It doesn't matter about Jonathan. But thank you so much for joining us. We're happy to take questions at this time or come find us afterwards.